And welcome to Remote Sales Live. I'm Jonathan Fischer, your host. We're excited to have you with us today, everybody. We have with us two fantastic guests. We have Darius Santos and Rob Botts. And Darius is a fitness expert, a specialist in creative business development, a successful entrepreneur of nearly 10 years. He's the co-founder of the groundbreaking video communications platform Dubb. He's also a highly regarded keynote speaker, an inspirational coach on all things related to sales, marketing, and video. We've also got with us Rob Botts. He's a media specialist. He's Dubb's director of partnerships and a video coach. He's here along with Darius to help us learn creative, innovative ways to engage more qualified prospects and increase our sales. Guys, fantastic to have you with us. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Awesome. Well, let's just jump right in, guys. So if we could, we want to talk today about getting more prospect, and an easy way to break that down is, how do you get into more conversations? How, so before the sale, how do you look at this vast world of opportunity and actually get your voice heard? We're going to look at that. We're going to follow it up with, once you're in conversation with a prospect you think could be qualified, how do you interact and get better results there? What are some mistakes being made? And then finally, what do we do as we're closing that sale and servicing that account? Mistakes being made, your better advice to handle that. So we want to have some chock full, really good gems from you guys today. We're going to leave some time at the end of the show for some Q&A from our live audience. And before we're all done, we're also going to give you an opportunity to share more with how folks could follow up with your solution, Dubb. So without further ado, guys, let's just jump in. If I could start with you, Darius, maybe one way to lead into this is, why did you start the platform that you have? Like, did you see some, just generally speaking, some issues in the area of business development that you kind of would put that fire in your bones to co-found
100%. So the other co-founder, Ruben, and I, we noticed a problem, right? Where actually his wife and I were both in real estate, doing business development, and noticed some shortcomings, some problems, some heartache, some things that we had to deal with, and realized there was a opportunity for technology to solve some of these things. The main problem I think that we were trying, or many of us are going to be facing, especially in the remote world, though, is the lack of personalization or sort of intelligence on your prospects. And the same thing came up in real estate, because like when you're going to go knock on somebody's door or cold call, you really don't have a whole lot unless you did your homework, unless you did the research, which is going to be the part that I want to talk about, which is knowing more about your ICP, your ideal customer profile, prior to reaching out. So had I known this back then, maybe I wouldn't have gone up to the door and cold, knocked on the door and not known who was going to answer or know anything about what I was doing. I was just knocking on the door. So it's kind of like that same thing. You can pick up a phone and have a little script, but if you don't know anything about the person on the other end, that may not result in the outcome that we're really looking for. And so all of our first kind of high level, how do we get more conversations? I think that's one of the biggest problems that we're facing, is selecting that ideal customer profile, selecting that audience and that message, so that there is enough personalization, there's enough intelligence in that message for the recipient, the viewer, the door answerer to say, okay, this guy actually has something of value for me, understand me, problem, my thing. That is, I think, one of the biggest problems right now, is we'll do just the door knocking or the spray and pray, where you're like, I'm going to go call 1,000 people. I don't know who they are, what's going on, but I'm going to get through these calls, or I'm going to get through this door. I'm going to send these emails. And not enough research, not enough personalization, not enough sort of to break through the noise that's happening, because people get a lot of door knocks, they get a lot of cold calls, they get a lot of emails, and we have to have an element of our messaging, of our outreach, that breaks through the noise, that really does something different.
That makes sense, Darius. So before the sale, one mistake we're making is just trying to scattergun approach, not having good intel on who it is we're speaking to, maybe not even having a focused enough list of targets. Rob, I know you would resonate with that. Would you add to that? Are we in an era where you can no longer just kind of play the numbers? You can't open a phone book like 30 years ago and just start dialing and hopefully hoping that good things will happen. Are we way past that? Would you agree? And what should we be doing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the whole numbers game with sales is a funny sentence, because it's really contradictory to itself, because prospects aren't numbers, and when you treat them like that, it kind of shows too. So what Darius talked about in terms of nailing it down to a niche, in terms of where's your target audience, where's the connection there, that's super important. Also, we live in a time where there's information available now more than ever. So if you're going to do your due diligence before the sale, you need to do the research in terms of profiles exist online, professional profiles, personal profiles, profiles in general are meant to be seen. So once you understand the prospects in the area and the activities they're doing, you really respect not only what they do, but they're giving you ways to prepare yourself to talk about them. Because a lot of the times everyone's so worried about preparing their script. Oh, I gotta get this script down. Okay, this is what I'm gonna say. This is what I'm gonna say to everyone. It's like, it's not a cookie cutter thing. One of the biggest things that always bugged me about it, oh, get this script memorized. It's like, look, you bring yourself to the table, but you've got to immediately have research ready to go that connects with someone right away about them. And then it's more of an investigative approach. But I think people do more research about themselves and their strategy than they do about the people they need to be speaking with.
Yeah. I mean, that's a common issue when it comes to sales is we're just blabbing out a bunch of stuff about our solution, our product, who we are as a company, why we're important. And really, none of us has time for that. If I don't know why you're of value to me, I don't really care. Would you agree with that, Darius? I mean, what gives with that? Why do you think that still remains such an issue with so many salespeople today?
I think that it is more of a human nature than anything else. Very often in times like in the dating world or something, there's a large percentage of people will say, well, look how amazing I am. I have all these great things and I'm this awesome person. Of course you want to date me, right? Because look how awesome I am. And maybe that can sometimes work in the dating world, but business is evolving, things are evolving. And I think that like I said, maybe it's a mistake that we often make. And there's a world where it works, right? We have to make noise. You have to sort of beat your chest sometimes. There's appropriate time and place for that. But in the outbound world, when we're trying to develop business, it's really more about them and about how we can articulate our solution and how we're able to provide value. Because if in back to the dating world, if they don't know that you care, then they don't care. So
yeah. Does this kind of raise the point, gentlemen, that you also need to know far more than what are the features and benefits of your solution that you offer, but you've got to know what's happening out there among the people that hopefully your solution would serve? Does that require its own research, and maybe is that even a support piece for the company to have offer some training and insight to their people on that issue?
I was going to say this definitely leaks into that sort of the next topic, which is the once the conversation is started, because absolutely understanding your customer, people who are using your product or service, how they're actually going to be using it. I actually have some pieces on how those bleed into the during the transaction and even post transaction, because understanding how the client, it doesn't, like you said, how your product or service is, what it's used for, but what if someone's using it for something that's very specific to them, and understanding that use case is going to be really beneficial. What we'll often do during sales presentations and things like that is, again, here, look at all our stuff. And people will make the mistake of saying, okay, well, what are your problems and solutions? Like, I know this is what we do, but what are you looking to accomplish? And oftentimes that gets overlooked because of the script, because of well, here's what I got to get through. I have my itinerary I must do, and then let me do this thing, and then you can talk, or then you can. And so it's I think a mistake that people often make, especially in the way that the world buyers and buying personas are changing, is there is more information available. They can window shop with everything and look at all the downloads and videos and everything before they've even ever actually spoken to someone. So they're usually more informed than historically.
Yeah, no doubt about that, which makes everyone have to up their game. That's a good thing. So, Rob, would you think that in sticking with the before the sale phase of things, I want to really dig deep on this before we move to the during the sale piece today. Are there some peripheral things that companies can offer, or that the management or training team can offer by way of better general industry knowledge? So I even know what kinds of questions to ask if I even get into a conversation.
Well, it really goes back to the targeting aspect. So you have different verticals. We do the same thing here, here as well, where once you've identified the vertical, then it's that deeper dive in studying the subject. Okay, what would the teams be looking at? What do they need in terms of service? How do they get the message out? A lot of the times features, we live in a world where features are, they're everywhere, right? This does this, this does this, it's going to do this. But I think a lot of times what gets lost is, what's the almost reverse engineering method of the feature? So if you're getting a car and oh my God, the AC in this car is incredible. You hit this button here and you start doing this. Whoa. It's like, well, start talking about the end first. The feeling you get when you're in that car, 120 degrees, and you're like, ooh, this is fantastic. You know what I mean? And then you get someone in that mindset. I think the trap of features is you're not leading with the value, and the value has to be the overview of what everything does. So for sales teams out there and people, on the ground floor doing the sales, remember, it's about bringing the value. Now more than ever, we live in a world where you could have the most incredible product or service, but people want to know your value prop. What do you stand for? What's behind that? Because that has become very important to buyers.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Darius, what does that even mean anymore when you talk about a value proposition? Because it seems to me that even that can sometimes be either kind of too corporate and maybe a little bit too almost precious in the way it's worded, and it can be too much about us. Would you agree? How should we be more better attuned to that messaging up front?
It's sort of like the manifesto. It's like this most important thing to our business. It's mission critical, but there's the way that the audience actually perceives that mission statement or that what your value proposition. So tailoring it toward the opportunity, the goal, I think is really important at this time. Because, like I said, we have our manifesto. We started out your mission statement, here's what we do, here's our value proposition, but then there's actually how it applies in the real world. So I think that very often those things can vary. Our use case, our value proposition, here's what it is, here's what we do. But then how that actually accomplishes in each specific business or application might be quite different. And so having that full picture and understanding of the buyer, of the product, of ourselves, of the service, that really, I think, helps articulate the value proposition, but then not actually saying the words value proposition or mission statement or any of those, because those are sort of like buzzwords or anything. So it's not even mentioned at this time. It's really just more of a conversation at this point, like either on the phone or during that initial contact of like, here's how we can help you specifically, not what we do. The mistake is when we say, here's what we do, we're amazing. And then the value proposition really should, I think at this point, be more weighted toward here's how we're helping businesses like you. So, and that's a mistake that I think people make.
I like that. You're almost combining social proof with that as well, which is great for selling when you're establishing that there is a credible solution that others are currently and identify with that. Rob, would this even speak to the management task where if I have a team of sales pros, obviously I want them to be well versed in what our solution is. That's plain. But this stuff sounds like it's pretty important too, right? Even in terms of like the motivation and kind of bringing some passion to the table. If I really know, hey, I can create these outcomes, I can kind of get excited about that and get behind that. Do you agree that's important? And if so, what are some steps that companies can take to help infuse that into their people?
Yeah, once you have, especially in a team setting, you've got to have the base level of motivation for everybody. So when you have the team together, it's that one common goal. We see the end first before we go to it. And it's like a lot of things in life. If you don't know what the end goal is, or you're kind of scattered among the team where everyone kind of has their own take, so to speak, on what that is, you don't want that. You need everyone looking in the same direction. So as a team leader, first get them looking in the same direction, get that base motivation of why. And what Darius was saying too, as far as the value, you've got to understand the value at the person you're about to speak with or engage with. You bring value, but what is their value? You've got to meet them. The values have to meet in the middle. So as far as steps, preparation, like we've talked about, that's number one. So common motivational goal, seeing the end, preparing the right way, and treating every engagement like a personal conversation that you're having. The one thing that if you've noticed today with YouTube videos and every other communication out there, some of the best videos in the world do well when someone's speaking directly to camera. Because as a viewer, you're like, oh, that person's speaking directly to me. So whether it's on the phone or video, you've got to make them feel like this conversation could go on for days if you wanted it to. And that's one of the biggest things when you're prepping your team. When you've got someone on the phone or you've got someone engaged through a communication platform, nothing else matters in terms of what's happening there. So that's a big part of it. So prepping them that way, common goal, motivation, taking your time. And the last thing is, and this is especially important for a team leader, recognizing in each of the individual reps, their particular skill sets and talent, because it's not a cookie cutter thing for everybody. You recognize what someone does really well, and you lean into those skill sets that lead into the value of the other to the prospect.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, and we're really leading into some of the solutions in terms of your advice to us today. How can we do better in light of all of these common errors where, I'm on the other end of the phone from somebody who's soliciting me, right? And they're on a script and I've already answered like 3 of their questions on their script in the very first interaction, and they still go ahead and ask those questions. It's like, that's a dead giveaway, right? Their process is not attuned in the way you were just saying, Rob.
Well, that's immediately where if someone asked you, their prep to answer is, oh, we absolutely align with that. So you could give an answer like, look, I'm actually an alien. I'm from a different planet. I'm not actually a human. And this would do nothing for me. Rob, we align with that. That's absolutely correct. It's like, did you hear anything I just said? So yeah, it happens a lot.
Yeah, a little pulse check there. So
Yeah.
what I'm hearing is an understanding the strengths and weaknesses. Maybe whatever, Dan over here, maybe he should kind of stick close to the script. Maybe Sally over here has really good facility on her feet, and she should be given a longer, more leeway to be herself, as long as we're hitting some highlights and getting through. What are additional ways that you would say that individual reps on the phone or working, using video can further personalize it and make it get through the clutter?
I think that the first step, it all starts before you even ever write that message, record a video, pick up the phone. It's in the research. There's so much technology and tools available for intelligence to get data, right? To get intelligence, like intent data, even on where those prospects are, what they're doing. So having that little bit of research, I believe, ahead of time, and then just taking a moment to articulate and write that message out, like think about it. So here's my script, here's my value prop, here's what I have to say. But then how does that align with what this prospect has here, who they are, their position, their opportunity? And so it's like a custom script each time that you're attacking opportunity. Now, in some instances, like really high volume approaches, this is difficult, right? Like if someone's like, I have a quota, I have 300 calls and 200 emails or whatever, I have this same quota I have to hit every day. And if there are opportunities like that, then sometimes making that perfect amalgamation of profile and your message is difficult. So it's tough to say. There are like that spray and pray method where people are doing a super high volume approach, and it's hard to mesh those perfectly. But I believe that's one of the most important things is lining the data up ahead of time, because it can make that process much more efficient. When you know your ICP, you have a specific industry or vertical, you can take many of those elements that's speaking directly to them and sort of mesh, as I was talking about, the profile with the message. So it's as tailored as it can be while still maintaining that scalability. But I think the key takeaway there is the research, Zach. So you get your data ahead of time and know very well where that's organized. And that will help you make these smart, more personalized outreaches as you're doing them. So.
Well, Darius, just to follow up with you on that, I love that input. There are a lot of our listeners to the show today are going to be in that SDR role. They have a large volume of contacts they're responsible to make to begin to get that outreach going. Yep. To go deeper on what you were recommending in terms of the research, how would you go about that just pragmatically? Would you have somebody in the management team maybe silo that out and maybe, by the day or by the hour have different like segments being called or team up on that? What are some of your thoughts on tackling?
I think would depend on the team structure as well. Like if you have your VP of sales and he's the one sort of enabling the team, or if you have a sales enabling, it depends on the structure of the team. So the actual person, this speaks to what Rob was saying as well, like the strengths and weaknesses. If you have the person who's good at data, good at building a list, then allow that person to use their strengths and say, okay, I got my team of SDRs, I'm going to hook them up with the lists, and then they can put the boots to the ground and really articulate the message. So I would, again, play to the strengths of the team members, because what a mistake we'll often do is we'll say, okay, here's the SDRs, and then we'll just give you guys wear all the hats. You're going to build the lists, you're going to do this and do that. And someone's not so good at list building. They're not so good at copywriting. And then so you have someone who's really good at building a list and someone who's really good on the phone and someone who's really good at copywriting. So they're sending good emails, they're doing good phone calls, and he's got a good list, but everyone else is suffering because they don't have the other strengths. So I think that's one of those components as well, is really playing to the strengths of the team, the size of the team, the structure of the team. Ideally, we'd all have all the hats and be able to do it all, right? Okay, I can build my own list, write my own emails, send my own stuff. Great, got your own business. But oftentimes we need support from both technologies and team members who have the intelligence to sort of build out a list or write copy or create the cadence, the sequence that you might leverage. So play to the strengths, but build the intelligence, build the data, the copy. It's a full team effort. One person can do it. It happens all the time. But I think playing to the strengths of those people and enabling, okay, you're the best copywriter, give us copy. You're the best on the phone, so let's give the majority of the calls to you. things like that, I think, will really help, especially smaller teams, scale more effectively.
That makes a lot of sense for being able to scale up and grow. The balancing act between your processes and your people, that comes up a lot with having dealt with an interview. I had the privilege of interviewing some of the entrepreneurs. That's always a thing, right? If it's too much focused on just people, then you can't. It's hard to replicate that, right? It's hard to scale that. If you focus only on process, then you end up with these kind of cookie cutter approaches that end up hindering results on that side. It's always this balancing act, it seems like to me.
Exactly.
Well, great gems on before the sale, guys. Let's move to that during the sale phase now. So we've got one, you know, we've got a prospect. They seem like they're well qualified. We're in a conversation of some kind. They're somewhere in the funnel. Let's talk about the big mistakes you're seeing being made every day out there as you guys are experiencing it, or
So with us, I think there's two, Rob, I'll start and then I'll pass it over to you. There's these two phases that are in the sort of middle of the sales cycle where someone's responded, right? They got past the development stage. They said, hey, this sounds interesting. Or better yet, they booked a demo or they're in that call. So we'll sort of play off of both of those. There's the I've shown interest or I'm in the demo. So I think both have misses, both have opportunities where people are making mistakes. Like the I have interest, seeing exactly where they have interest, I think is something that's the most important thing. Figuring out exactly what part of your message or offer or whatever it was, I think is super critical before you take that next step in setting the appointment or in moving the conversation further. Understanding exactly what their motivations are, I think is the most important thing, where I know a lot of appointment setters, they're not concerned about that as much. They're like, here's my series of questions that you're going to fill out when we're setting this appointment. And it's sort of very cookie cutter and here you go. So I think that's a sort of shortcoming that a lot of people will do in the before the appointment sort of stage, where they miss the motivation. They miss the exact reason why that person, because, you know, just because we wrote the same message or similar message to 50 people and 10 of those people respond, those 10 people probably have different motivations for the reason that they responded. The second part of that is actually in the presentation during the demonstration, that same motivation we just talked about, really keeping and having access to that and articulating our message around that motivation. Because we always fall back to, oh, I have a script, I have a thing, I have this thing that I've done. And so let me get through this and then figure something else out. And understanding that motivation from the start, from before the call begins, during the call, I think that is probably one of the biggest things that a lot of people will not do correctly, because they understand, okay, you said you're looking to accomplish this. So you're looking, then they'll repeat it and say, okay, here's you're looking to accomplish, but then the rest of the presentation or the rest of the messaging is not tailored around that core motivation. So for me, that's been one of the biggest things, is making sure that understanding the core motivation of your individual opportunity and then tailoring all of your messaging during that intra-sales cycle to that motivation, because that's ultimately the reason they decided to talk to you in the first place.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, Rob, would you find that whole the cookie cutter versus tailoring it? I mean, it can't be completely bespoke each time either, right? I mean, we have to have a core set of messages that we're using, and we need to have a core deck, and we have to, you know, we train to that. But there's that need to tailor it. Where's some other, you know, where's you can make sure you're kicking that ball in leadership, or maybe you're the person on the as an SDR, maybe you're an SDR that's also, you know, being trained to be more full cycle, or you're an AE, there's somebody in that space. Again, as many structures as Darius stated. What are some ways we can better carry that ball?
Well, the key is, number one, is to understand nuance. You know, sales is a lot about nuance. You know, you have your backbone of what you do, but when you have a conversation with someone, because at the end of the day, it is a conversation. No matter what medium you're in, it is a conversation. You have your goal in mind, but the one thing that Darius talked about, when someone shows interest, one of the first things that you want to ask them, if they have not answered already, even if they have on a form, you want to lead with, like, hey, Jonathan, you know, I saw you filled out our form, or hey, Jonathan, I know you're interested in the product or service. Talk to me about kind of the mindset of signing up for this. What's kind of the thought here? What was your reason for reaching out, and what's kind of the plan? And when you ask a question like that, they've got to sit there and think, okay, why did I initially reach out? And most of the time, they're going to tell you what they saw that they liked, which is why they reached out, but they'll also tell you what their plan is to kind of utilize it. So if you're doing a demo or something like that, it immediately gets you right into, okay, let's hold the hands together down this hallway, and I'm going to show you exactly everything you need to know. The thing too is a lot of times when Darius spoke about like, someone can veer off in another direction. Veering off is okay only if the veering off enhances and educates the person on something maybe they weren't aware of, which really will help them in their goal. If they want help in getting through door A, but I'm showing them door B that's down the hallway to the left, that doesn't help them at all. But if this other door connects to the door in some kind of way, that's what you want to do. I feel that the opening minutes of when someone's interested, as long as you ask them, they will tell you everything. One of the biggest things in sales that I've kind of learned over the years, and again, this could be done on any medium. This could be done in an asynchronous video. This could be done in person. Ask a question and wait for that response. No matter what it is, ask that question, ask a good, deep question, and you will get everything you need to continue the conversation. One of the biggest mistakes people usually make is when they get, whether it's a cold call, outreach, sometimes even if it's just someone's interested, hey, Jonathan, how you doing? And as soon as you say that, and we have no relationship whatsoever, in my mind, I'm like, first of all, Jonathan doesn't care how I'm doing. Second of all, you just made it super awkward because I've got to give an answer now. Well, Jonathan, I'm kind of having a crappy day, honestly. If I really got into that, we'd be on the phone for a little while. If you really want to know how I'm doing. Yeah. So the biggest thing you want to remember is if I was cold calling you, Jonathan, or we're communicating someone, hey, Jonathan, it's Rob from Dubb. I noticed that you did blah, blah, blah. I wanted to know blah, blah, blah. Like you want to ask a question to make them think. And they will answer that question. You just don't want to assume that you're going to send some tidbit of information to mean anyone. They're just going to move on from it. They're not going to be listening. The biggest problem in the environment when someone during a sale is they don't understand they've got to create the ultimate listening environment. So if you have someone when they're in an environment, they're not listening, it's like you're trying to climb uphill. You're already doing yourself a disservice as a salesperson. The other thing, if you're communicating with someone that's not the right person you need to speak with, and this happens a lot with outreach, don't waste a lot of time on the supposed rapport building with a connector. You can be really quick, like, hey, Jonathan, Rob from Dubb, I'm looking to talk to whoever's in charge of blah, 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 because this is what I'd love to speak to them about. And then once you make them feel like they're part of the story and they're could be connecting with something that could be really great, then they'll help you out. But the more time you waste on almost pitching the person that needs to connect to the other person is just time not well served.
Yeah, I like that. And if you're respecting my time, if anything, you might build better rapport with me anyway, right? If I can feel you're kind of keeping a good clip.
You're busy, Jonathan. I'm not going to spend 20 minutes talking to you when you're trying to surf through your Facebook, and Instagram. Like, listen, I'm super busy right now, and you're really interrupting the reel I'm about to make. So, yeah, love that. Well, Darius, I mean, Rob talked about ways to break rapport by not being attuned, right? And maybe focusing again back on what our own process is and what we're doing, and not listening really well. I've heard the old adage that when the person who's asking the questions is in control. I'm not sure that I like that very much. But you do need to offer some leadership, and maybe you're just deepening the level of trust and furthering the process. And what are your thoughts on that question ask and that whole issue of rapport there? What would you add to that?
I think like you just mentioned there, the being in control situation, very oftentimes we want our salespeople to be in control, to feel in control. But in reality, what Rob mentioned, that conversation, the buyer is more intelligent, and people don't like a pushy salesperson, aggressive salespeople these days. Like people are very averse to that. They will say, well, I was going to do business, but somebody was really pushy and aggressive. I don't want to talk to them anymore. It's just like ruined it for them. And so that the essence of the conversation, I think, is actually really important, where it doesn't feel like you're dominating the conversation and directing it and guiding it. And a lot of the sales tactics and things that we've used in the past, people, especially buyers, consumers that are consuming our products and services, they're not new to this. They've been sold before. And so when we're using these antiquated and outdated things that have been successful in the past, it sort of gets people's ears burning now. And they're like, oh, I'm kind of annoyed now because I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to control the conversation and psychologically dominate me in this call, and I'm just trying to get a solution. And so I think that the conversational piece of it is more important. But the conversation can't happen until we've overcome those things that we talked about earlier. Understanding your product or service, having a very clear value proposition and articulation of your ability to help people, but then also understanding the customer, also understanding their product and problem and how you're helping them. So the full understanding, you can't have a good conversation until that's there. And that can be part of the conversation. But again, like you said, the questions, you're like, okay, and how big is your company? And then how many people? And then what's your revenue? And then like, what is the opposite of a conversation? It's gonna break the connection. If it's in an email, if it's in a form, if it's it's very impersonal and it doesn't, and then the person filling out the form is like, God, I already did this like 3 times, or, it creates frustration and it creates the lack of a conversation. And then that information can all be gathered in a conversational form, while building rapport, while actually nurturing that opportunity instead of sort of walling them with, here's a form thing, and then eventually you'll talk to somebody maybe. So
yeah.
The conversational aspect of it, I think, is just super important, because that's the part of the rapport where instead of breaking it, you're actually building it through doing what you're supposed to do, gathering intelligence and guiding the conversation where it needs to go.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And during the sale, obviously, video is a huge piece as well, whether we're using a live format like we are right this very moment, or whether we're using a video solution, sending communications that are furthering the conversation. When we're talking about B2B selling, there a lot of times it's a cycle that's going to require multiple touches, and it's going to require multiple days, weeks, maybe even months to get closed from the first conversation. So what are some other ways that people are missing opportunities, Rob? And what would you say as a video coach yourself, where folks can maybe get better and be better attuned with at this point, their pipeline now?
Yeah, well, one of the biggest things is recognizing the sales landscape. I mean, we're really, really moving towards an asynchronous content selling world where the buyer has so much of the advantage now more than ever in terms of choices. And when you send a piece of asynchronous content material through video, you're respecting the buyer and the fact that you are confident in your message, you're confident in your connection, and you're respecting them when they see that video, whether it's on their mobile or on the computer, where they're really taking the time by themselves to watch the message. And when you have calls to action that they can take from that video, when you get a call to action from something like that, that is absolute gold, because they have taken that action after what they've watched. Now, there is a strategy that we have in terms of, there is prospecting, there is follow-up, and there is nurturing that will always exist no matter what. But it's about letting the data from these videos lead you in the right correction. So instead of cold calling, you're smart calling. Like this is all about recognizing the data, the power of the data, and then leaning into the fact that the buyer realizes there are a lot of choices out there, but they liked your message the best because it hit home and they wanted to take that next step. So my overall thing is have confidence when you're on video, because a lot of the times we work with Dubb clients, you'll have someone that's wonderful on the phone and then they go and shoot their video and they completely are like this. Hello, I am Rob. I am very comfortable and I'd like to talk to you. Do you have a minute to speak later today? Book a time. Like, it is literally the most uncomfortable thing to watch. And the one thing that I remind people about is the personal is the professional now more than ever. So if you're out walking your dog, there's a phrase that one of our sales trainers talks about, so selfies to CEOs. It's more about the message and you just being you than anything else. It's not about the setup. It's not about any of that. So when I talk to people, because one of the concerns I talked to this one Dubb client about was, Rob, like when I make a video, I'm just constantly thinking about how I look. I'm like, well, let me ask you this. When you're meeting with a client in person, whether it's at a coffee shop, in a meeting, are you thinking about how you look when you're talking to the person? No, I'm not about that. Exactly. Two advantages with video and when you're doing asynchronous content. You can do the video as many times as you like. You can shoot it 20 times if you'd like. You can't do that when you're live. It's like being in theater. You're live on stage, ready to go. There's no takebacks. With film, you can redo it. The other thing is, when I'm talking to camera, am I talking to myself or am I talking to the person on the other end? I'm talking to the person on the other end. Focus on them. That is the biggest thing. Take the biggest parts of your personality and let them come through. If you're someone that loves to pause when you speak, take a pause. You know what I mean? Lean into your personality. So when people see that you are being authentic, it's one of the biggest drums we beat. There is a connection there. There is a connection. If someone feels like you are reading a script and you feel like you're just going to turn the page and go to the next one, that immediately you're out. You're out immediately. Yeah. So that's what I'd say for that.
Yeah, very, very true. And real quickly, you mentioned asynchronous video content. Maybe we could quickly define that for our audience.
Yeah, sure. So, sorry, go ahead, Darius.
Go for
it. So basically, this right now is synchronous. So you're on the meeting. We're doing this right live. We're doing it together. Asynchronous is when a piece of video content is created. It's sent to the person and they whenever.
Well, and Darius, it sounds like, obviously the numbers of contacts required to get a result do shrink when we're talking about real pipeline, right? I mean, it takes thousands and thousands to get many, many dozens of potential to get, just a handful of really good pipeline prospects into the funnel, correct? And so it probably, what I'm hearing from Rob, would you agree, Darius, is it's worth it to maybe take that time and make that personalized message. Now we can really, really almost be bespoke, at least in terms of that messaging. Because I've got maybe 12 or 15, 20, even if I had 50, okay,
Yeah.
companies and contacts that I'm trying to work on, I have the time, right, to do
Yeah.
that. Would you agree with that? Is that what you recommend?
I think too, it's what Rob was saying, is using the technology to have the intelligence for not cold calling, for smart calling, for smarter follow-up. So there's so many things at our disposal these days that we can know when somebody's visiting our websites. We can know when somebody's opening our emails, clicking on our links. Like, there's a lot of intelligence where we can get and make informed decisions. So someone visited a certain site on our page, we can give that person an outreach and say, I saw you were checking out our reviews and testimonials. We'd love to be able to add you to this. I'll work, you can articulate a message based on the data and intelligence. So I think that is one of the key takeaways, is if it is personalized, because a lot of us these days are leveraging sequences and automations to automate many of these touch points.
Sure.
That is more in the high level that we sort of already talked about, right? To fill the pipeline. And once you have those opportunities that have said, hey, I'm interested, then I think that's where the bespoke, the custom messaging really will do a better job of moving them down that pipeline, because they've already said, okay, this looks interesting, to the high level stuff. Yeah. Now they really need to know, if they haven't moved forward already, right? They haven't been in the presentation or gone through the next stage of the sales cycle, then that's really where the asynchronous content, our messages, our sequences of things will need to be a little bit more bespoke, a little bit more personal for them, because they've sort of gotten past that, hey, I'm interested phase. So that middle phase, that nurturing phase is, sorry, I got my gardener here, really critical to the outcome of that pipeline. So I think that having your technology in place is probably one of the more important things, because if you have to have all the technology in place before the messaging begins in order to have the intelligence to follow up. So you can't send out thousands of messages and book all these meetings and then puts technology and stuff in place. It sort of needs to be in play beforehand, so you have the opportunities as they arise.
I do love that, Darius, what you're saying. I do think there's a lot of companies out there that they just have a good basic tech stack of some kind, hopefully, and they'll hopefully have some sales sequences in place, right? Even there, though, even if I don't have all of those really effective and powerful tools in place where I can know if they've clicked and know if they're watching or listening, I could still, I've got some conversations and some notes, right? I still know that I spoke with, Dan last Tuesday about his situation, and I can still reference that in a video that I attached to the email that was the next one in the sequence, right? And still get some result. Would you agree? Are there some good workaround ways that an SDR listening to us today could begin to implement on what you're saying?
Absolutely. I mean, so regardless of the whole, if you don't have a whole tech stack built, by the way, there's plenty of free technology out there these days, like HubSpot even there's a free version of it. You can plug in there and it'll track stuff for you. So if you're not using and again, there's costs and benefits of each of these. I know sometimes tracking pixels can affect deliverability. So if you're cold prospecting, maybe wait until they've raised a hand and then you deliver something with a tracking pixel in it. So like, this is more the tech side, very, very technical, but point is there are free solutions and solutions of all kinds available for all types of data. But even without the data, even if you're using spreadsheets, you still have a sequence, right? If John responds to you, then you know what you're going to say next, or you have an idea of it. So even if that sequence isn't built in an automated tool, you definitely need to have your cadence and know, okay, if this person responds this, so I call, it's going to be laid out one way or the other, whether you're using a technology to deliver it automatically or it's all just up in here. Don't recommend having it up in here. Get it written down at some stage. So that it's a process and you can hire and train and repeat that process. So definitely don't just keep it up here, even if it's there right now. But no, having even just spreadsheets and intelligence and then the data there will be better than none. Will be better than not having the all the technology in place. So I did mention a kind of fancy tech stack there with link tracking and open clicks and stuff like that. But it's fancier than it sounds. It's simple stuff, not too complex.
Yeah, it becomes more and more feasible every day, no question about that. And we're fans of making it happen. It's worth an investment in a tool like that. If you're listening and you're maybe a founder or you're a management leader with some poll, it's definitely worth it to be able to track what's happening with your pipeline. I want to move into the next phase in a minute to the after the sale. But before I do, one more question for Rob. If I have some pipeline, and we all know that some of these projections don't always go as we want them to, right? Some of these contacts get a little cold, start ghosting us, or just whatever. Do you feel like asynchronous video has the power to break some of those loose again? And if so, how would you go about that?
Yes. So this is the thing. Let's just say that I've sent you, Jonathan, a couple of videos, and not only you're not watching the videos, you're not even responding. I don't even know if you're alive. So I've got to figure out, okay, so how am I gonna get rid of this guy? Am I gonna kind of keep in the pipeline of the automations of what you're doing? The great thing about the whole, I'll use the word phrase, newsletter, is the fact that, let's just say we have a new feature that's coming out, or we have some new news with Dubb that I think is really important. But the news is related to the niche that these automations are related to. So if we're talking to someone, let's just say in the sporting industry, you have your messaging tailored to that. But anything new with Dubb that's like, whoa, this just came out that we're working on that will immediately benefit you in your niche. It's like an update. So you do it, and you can pick the time frame. Is it every couple of weeks? Is it every other week? Whatever you decide to do, just keep them in the automated loop, because you'd be surprised if you don't shut the door, sales that will eventually come in because they finally saw something like, oh, that's kind of cool. I just haven't had, a lot of people just don't have time sometimes. They see it like, oh, I'm going to get to that. I just haven't gotten to it. So constantly knocking on that door with information that's useful to them. Not like, hey, we're doing this deal, we're doing that. No, what thing is happening that I am interested in? So that's what it's about.
Yeah, I love that. You don't want to undercut your own value by offering some cheesy offer. But wait, if you didn't do it before,
it's called the slash method. It's not $99.99. It's not $49.99. It's $19.99. I mean, come on, give me a break.
That's right. Buy one today, get a second one. Pay only shipping. Yeah.
We don't. Tomorrow you get the next email with another discount, and then you lose all credibility.
Yeah, for sure. It's about adding value, and we've even trained that in teams I've been on, where you can't, if don't back up on price, but offer to add even additional value is always a better option. Like maybe if it's consulting, add some more consulting, or whatever it is. The idea here of having kind of like two parallel planes of communication using video is kind of what I'm hearing from you, Rob. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but where you almost have this personal thing going, that can run a little cold. Frankly, they don't know what the heck to tell you anymore. They just awkwardness. They don't want to bother, right? They're just not ready. It's okay. You've got this other plane of communication going on where there could be some value, and that could loop us back in. Is that kind of what you feel Rob was saying, Darius? What would you add to that?
Exactly. I was going to say, so instead of just doing, hey, just following up, instead of doing that, because that will probably get ignored, and eventually it's like, okay, like you said, I don't have any update for you right now. We're waiting on this, waiting on that. And eventually that may stall to, like you said, they just don't have the answer, or their VP or their decision maker said, next quarter, whatever, not right now. And so being able to stay top of mind, this is a term that's used in like real estate and professional services more, I think, but staying top of mind is really critical there for every industry, because you can't just keep following up. You can't do that, right? Someone's going to block you eventually. But when you're providing something that's nurturing, that's educational, that's timely, relevant, that type of information is much less likely to be unsubscribed from. Like, they're not going to say, remove me from the list. They're going to say, oh man, we got to get another look at the solution. Remember, we were talking about this last quarter and we got all the way through the demo. What was the price again? Oh yeah. And it's having that top of mind component, I think, is very critical there. But again, timely, relevant information, not just following up. That's the opposite of that. And so I think that's what Rob is referring to that newsletter, that market update, that product update, whatever it is. It's the value, the education, the nurturing side of it, instead of just following up, right? Because just following up isn't nurturing anybody. Again, it's nurturing us, it's nurturing our pipeline, it's trying to get us to close deals, but it doesn't do anything for our prospects, our recipients. So we need to do something more valuable for the both of us: educate, inform, nurture, but then also take action, because you send that product update to your 50 gone cold pipeline deals, and 4 of them clicked it, watched it, opened it, whatever. And then now you have 4 opportunities that you didn't before. So having the data along with timely, relevant messages, it all sort of adds up to more opportunities. So you're sitting there looking at a list and you're like, I don't know who to call, I don't know what to do. The technology really sorts and filters that too. Here's your low hanging fruit. these are your people that are ready to take action right now. And then you can always start there, get your data, good start, get motivated, and then you go hit the people that don't want to talk.
I love that.
Hey, Jonathan, also real quick, something called the giving advantage. So even if you don't want to, if I'm reaching out to you and you haven't responded, yeah, I've got a lot of great news about what Dubb's doing, all that great stuff, but also I could send you something that's a piece of content, whether it's a video, article, whatever it is, that's related to what you do that would help you with what you do. And I'm just offering it to you. Hey, I saw this. This will really help your company. I know you do this. Check this out. So it's really just about offering education. And then the key is, even if I give you something of value to you, what you're doing, but it's not salesy at all, right? The whole link in bio below phrase, especially on social media and wherever you are, you could see this wonderful piece of content. Wow, Rob just sent me this. This is really cool. This is kind of helpful with what I do. Oh, wait, yeah, here's Dubb down here. Let me go to their site. So there's a lot of that goes on in terms of you're just offering something of value constantly with your newsletter, so to speak, and you get a sale from that.
I love that. So we almost have a third plane of communication here, where we're not just nurturing pipeline on a personal level. We're not just offering really great intel, but we're even thinking beyond that. Like, what could I pull out of the archives, or what have I come across that's really, really cool, that's got nothing to do, and I can reestablish that connection. I like that a lot. So let's move the after sale piece. So we've done our work. We've built a really great pipeline. We're closing deals. Now it's time to service those new accounts. What are some mistakes being made? Where are we dropping balls out there as you guys see it?
One thing I know that we personally have made a mistake with, and I've seen this time and time again, dozens and hundreds of times at this point, where we have closed an amazing opportunity, but we don't do our diligence to get the most out of that opportunity. Things like social proof, reviews, case studies, testimonials, actually making sure that account is serviced and successful. So the account management is sort of, that comes even before the stuff that I just mentioned, because first we have to make sure that they're successful in their endeavors. And then when they actually achieve success, being able to capture and then recycle and reuse that story, I think is an opportunity that a lot of people miss. Maybe some of the people remember over their best one, they'll remember that. But having as many of these stories and opportunities, I think is relevant, because these success stories become ammunition. They become leverage for winning new deals and more deals. Because when you connect with somebody and you're like, you know what, I have a case study that we did that's just like you. They were same size company, same industry, everything was so similar. I just have to share this story with you and let you know how they succeeded. So these opportunities, I think, is probably one of the biggest things people make the mistake of doing, is not getting every little drop of opportunity that they can, asking for the referral, collecting the testimonial, the case study, the success story of that outcome, and of course the actual account management driving that success. So adoption of whatever that product or service is. That's the first part, the adoption. So I kind of went backwards there. Started with reviews and stuff, but yeah, adoption first, account success, and then the collection of the social proof. Those three elements I've seen lacking in many, many different businesses. They're like, all right, we closed the deal, next deal. Like, wait, no. This deal is not done. This deal needs a whole bunch of stuff. We need the referrals from them. They got 3 more businesses for you to sign up. They need the testimonial from them. Once you've captured their success, you need to collect that story and write it and share it. So that's what I've seen, is people really drop the ball after the deal is done. They're like, next deal.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, would you say, Rob, that you know, that the gathering of the testimonial, it can be a drop ball because you got so focused on just servicing the account, and maybe you forget that there's value in that, even beyond future sales, right? Do you feel like there could be some value for that account? Like, as they're going through and helping to tell that story, they're maybe getting resold. Is there value in that?
Yeah, of course. You know, when someone's able to talk about their story, and one of the big things we do is we do case studies with Dubb users. You know, hey, how's it going? We can see your account here, but talk to me more about the experience. What's it been like? You know, and I think when someone tells their story out loud to someone, it kind of reminds them of like, oh yeah, that's why I'm doing this, and oh, I have a question about this, and oh, this is really cool. I was thinking about doing this. So within a company, they can even within their own structures talk to other departments about, yeah, this has been really fun doing this. This is really cool. But I think people love being able to talk about what they're doing a lot of the times, you know? And I feel like people in general, like once the sale's done, like once it's signed and you got everyone in there, I know it sounds kind of backwards, but during the sale and especially after, That's really where the rapport comes in, like big time, because now they've trusted you enough to take your product or service. And now it's that they're able to relax and really have a conversation, and really get into the nuances of relationships and everything. If they were going to reshoot the movie Glenn Ross, the most famous sales movie of all time, right? If Baldwin was going to flip over that board, it wouldn't be ABC, always be closing. It would be ABO, always be opening. Because that's the huge difference of today. It used to be like, hey, manipulate someone, twist their arm, to get that deal. It's like, that's not what this is about. Because once you've closed that deal, that's just the beginning of the relationship. Because think about it. If I buy your product or service and I don't hear from you, like I don't get any updates, I don't have any kind of outreach, that's almost insulting in terms of like, well, I have this, like, let's check in. How's it going? We care. You could even do that. Speaking of asynchronous content, you could have a video made that could go out to your entire list of clients and say, how's it going? Talk to me, hit our reply with video button. Let us know how it's going, set up a time, because we care, we want to know. And I think that is one of the most powerful things you can do, is you've got to make rapport in some way or another once that person has decided to go with you.
I like that a lot. I think that some reps almost get afraid to have that kind of a conversation. It's like, okay, I got one in the hopper. I don't want to mess it up anymore. Instead of really maintaining that confident place of service. Would you agree with that, Darius? Have you seen that?
100%. Actually, I had that early on here, and even our own business. I'm like, okay, we got the deal done. It's done. It's okay. I'm almost afraid to contact them, because then, did they do the adoption? Are they using it like they should? And that fear is real, right? That's common. It's the same reason why we don't follow up. We don't do the things that we're supposed to do. And so overcoming that's just something internal, right? We got to get over that, because the healthy business practices, and there's so much opportunity left on the table when we're not doing that, when we're not connecting with those closed deals and ensuring their success, ensuring their account management. Sometimes it's like a bandwidth thing. Like when we very first started, it was, there wasn't enough of us to chase everybody down and make sure everyone was successful. And so if you find yourself in that circumstance where, like maybe your income is tied to the outcome of this account, you're like, man, I have to make sure this thing is successful. There ends up, again, I'm a big proponent of the technology. Look at my LinkedIn, right? It said sales, marketing, automation stuff. So leverage the technology where you're able to. So like Rob was saying, the asynchronous video component, you can have one video or one email or one landing page, whatever it is, that gets sent out to each of these opportunities, right? And it's generic enough to provide the function, but not exclude or alienate anyone that you're reaching out to. So you reach out to every one of those existing account customers and say, how can we help? How can we make sure that you're more successful today? And then in that meeting, you're like, okay, great. We did these things that made you successful. I gave you these tools, these things. Now, what about a referral? How about this? How about that? So it opens the conversation, because if you reach out to someone, you're like, hey, we need a referral. And they're like, we're not even using your stuff. We haven't attended your sales coaching in a week. We're not even going to renew, or whatever the situation. So having the conversation always start with the value. How can we help? And then it ultimately leading to more pipeline, more success, more revenue for us as well. So it's it's that, not the it's the flywheel effect that people will talk about now, not the funnel where you come in the funnel, go out the funnel, and you're out of the funnel. It's the flywheel that I think people are more transitioning to in business, because it's more effective. It's better, right? You get a evangelist instead of a number. So
yeah. I like that a lot. I think the flywheel versus the funnel. I think that's got some legs, and I like the idea that we are really giving the other party a chance to have a reason to refer us by making sure that we service the socks off of them.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it brings me back as well to an earlier comment you made, Darius, about maybe assigning your team according to this. Maybe somebody that is not necessarily as good at enrolling new clients is fantastic at servicing them once they're on board. It might make sense to structure around that. I'm sure you would agree.
Absolutely. So again, yes, thank you for that. Leading into the team structure and strengths. Sometimes you got the multi-hat guy. He's going to do it all, right? He's going to call them, close them, nurture them. Great. Maybe take that person, find out what their best strengths are, and have them just do that one thing, because he's a talented person. Use their strengths. Like he just mentioned too, if you have a closer, you have a caller, a setter, you have people with those skill sets, make sure that they're being leveraged where they're most effective. And it's not necessarily a most comfortable thing, because you ask someone here, what are you best at? They're probably going to tell you what they're most comfortable with. And it's not always what their best skill set is. So It's each person, again, that's definitely not a cookie cutter thing. You can't apply a blanket to a group of people and say, okay, here's the rules. That's a conversation. That's a unique, everyone's very unique in their own sense, but finding the skill sets and appropriating them to the appropriate accounts. So this person calls an account management, has a really great smile, and is great at getting them to collect their testimonial or their review or share their success story. And then you got your dialer who he knows how to work a multi-dialer and he's just powering through stuff. So exactly, accommodate your team by putting them where their strengths will best serve themselves and your team.
I love it. Well, guys, we blasted through some really fantastic content today. I'm grateful for that. With the remaining few minutes we have, we can take a few of the questions we have from our live audience. I'll just put them out there, and either or both of you can tackle these. I have a question from Josh out there who's asking. He hears different opinions about role play inside of teams. Some think it's live by it. Others think it's a dumb idea. Even where do you guys come down? Is that something you believe in practice? What would you recommend?
I think that initially, like when we're training, onboarding new sales reps, some role play is going to be really critical, because you as the VP, as the trainer, as the person of the understanding of the ICP, you're going to know a couple common objections, a couple common things that that you're going to deal with, that the reps are going to deal with. Throwing those to them in a realistic situation will do a couple things. It'll see, A, how can they react? It'll B, put a fire under them and say, well, I did a really terrible job there. I need to fix that. So that there is some value in role playing. With a more experienced person, I don't know if it's as valuable, because you both are on the same side of things and we know that what the customers are going to say and everything. So I believe initially it has a lot of value when training brand new reps. I think there's a good place for role play.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, Rob, I got a question just for you. So I'll go to you next from Jay Michael. He's asking, Rob, how would you describe the perfect first contact video message to a prospective client?
Hey, Jonathan, how you doing? This is Rob out here in Los Angeles with Dubb. I hope you're doing well. Listen, I'm reaching out because I noticed that your company has a service that I feel we could really integrate well with. I love what you've done with your customers, blah, blah, blah. Listen, book a time in my calendar below, or you can actually hit our reply with video button below and you can send me your thoughts right back. But I really would love to have just a good conversation about what you're doing, because we're really inspired by it. And I'd love to get your thoughts. So just something really personal that you've noticed, and make it personal like that, and ask a question, like engage them, don't just be some other cookie cutter message. Bring your personality. That's one of the biggest things. So there is no perfect prospecting message. There's only the perfect of you being yourself. That's really what you want to focus on. What am I asking? What you've got to get right to the point, because people today have less time than they've ever had. So Don't worry about this perfect thing. The 80-20, get in there, be yourself, and be relaxed and enjoy the message. They're going to feel that. That's what I would say. It's important more than anything else.
My two tips on that same thing, the prospecting video message, keep it short, right? Nobody wants a 5-minute welcome thing. So keep it very short. Try to make the thumbnail be something that they recognize. So when you're sharing a video in a message, whether it's in LinkedIn or email or whatever, there's going to be a preview of that video. If the preview is just of us doing this, they don't recognize us yet if it's business development, sales development. So this is not as interesting as something of theirs, like their website or their LinkedIn profile, something of theirs. So that's another really key takeaway when prospecting, is making sure that the preview is interesting for them, because it's about them, not about us. So the preview is very interesting for them. It's short, right to the point. Home runs is the point of video prospecting. It's not to say, here's a full 30-minute sales presentation that's going to tell you everything I could possibly, even though I don't know about you yet, I'm going to tell you everything, right? It doesn't make any sense. You say, here's the home runs about what our product or service can do specifically for you, because I understand your business and your problems, and here's how this solution. So again, very short, less than 2 minutes, home runs, keep it high level, because we don't know about them yet. We don't know their motivation or problems and things yet. So all those elements, I think, make a perfect prospecting video.
I love that. A follow-up question that works right after that from Dennis. When you're trying to start and then transition through these videos in early prospecting, if that one doesn't get any response, or doesn't seem to have legs, do you plan sequences out? Do you do 2 or 3? Like what is your methodology Again, this is just trying to develop
Yeah,
new
yeah,
business
this is
outreach.
perfect. So again, using that intelligence on the content. So when you're sharing videos, you are able to see, did they watch it? Did they click? What percentage did they view? We actually have several approaches. We have automated approaches that the first video is custom, and then based off of activity, things will happen, right? Did they watch? Did they click? Did they open? Activities will happen. Either a manual thing where we have people that go in and say, did they watch the video? Yes. Okay. Follow up with them and say, hey, I saw you took action. And if they did not, then the follow-up is according. And it's like, hey, our data showed you that you didn't have a chance to see this video that we made just for you. So using the analytics, the intelligence from the data, the tools that you're using, that actually helps shape the cadence, the follow-up, the next steps in that message. So yes, use the video for its data and tracking, and then act on those things. So if somebody watches 100% 3 times, they're pretty engaged. Like they watch, or better yet, if you have a button that says, I'm interested, or check out these case studies. Someone that's viewing your case studies is down at the bottom of your funnel, right? They're ready to like know about the solution. So you can use all that data and intelligence to make informed decisions in your sequences, whether they be automated or manual. At this point too, the more you can send manual sort of one-to-one, it does get better deliverability. Just like if you send directly through an email client, not through like a MailChimp or whatever, it's always going to get the best deliverability in that little one-to-one format. So just food for thought.
Yeah, the deliverability is the name of the game in those communications. Well, Rob, Darius, you've been very generous with your time today, and you've dropped gold gem after gold gem on our audience. We're grateful for that. You got a great solution to practice what we've been preaching today in Dubb. Would you share with us briefly how our audience could maybe follow up and take next steps to learn more about you guys?
Absolutely. So we are dubb.com, dubb.com, a video communication tool primarily used for business development and sales. So we've trained thousands of sales teams on how to leverage video in their prospecting, business development, marketing, nurturing, recruiting, like everything. We've trained people on how to use video for many different things, primarily business development and outreach. So if you guys are looking to equip your team, your tech stack with the power of video, definitely check out dubb.com. There's a free trial. And I host live trainings every day. In fact, I'm going to jump into one right now. So come on in and see us, and we'll answer every question you have there.
All right. Well, fantastic. Well, audience, thank you so much for being with us. On the behalf of the whole Overpass team, I'm Jonathan Fischer once again. Thanks for being here for another fantastic, value-packed episode of Remote Sales Live. Let's go make it a great, successful day, everybody. Bye-bye now.